Hello, this is Dr. Afsari Usmani, Assistant Professor of Economics, GDC Agraharam, District Rajanna Sirsilla. Today I am going to discuss about the types of taxes. There are two types of taxes, namely direct tax and indirect tax. The implementation of both the taxes differs. You pay some of them directly, like the cringed income tax, corporate tax, and wealth tax, etc. Well, you pay some of the taxes indirectly, like sales tax, service tax, value added tax, etc. So, a direct tax is really paid by a person on whom it is legally imposed, while an indirect tax is imposed on one person but paid partly or wholly by another, owing to a consequential change in terms of some contract or bargaining between them. In other words, direct taxes are those taxes taxed immediately on the property and income of person, and those that are paid directly by the consumer to the state. Income tax, interest tax, wealth tax, corporation tax are all examples of direct tax. Whereas indirect taxes are those that affect the income and property of person through their consumption expenditure. Customs duties, excise duties, sales tax, service tax are all examples of indirect taxes. Indirect taxes are levied on the goods and services which people consume. పన్నుల రకాలలో ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నులు, పరోక్ష పన్నులు అని ఉంటాయి. అయితే దీనిలో అమలుపరచడంలో అంటే విధించడంలో తేడా ఉంది రెండింటిలో. ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నులు, పరోక్ష పన్నులు, ఒకవేళ ఎవరి మీద పన్ను విధించబడిందో వాళ్ళే చెల్లిస్తే, అంటే అంతిమ భారం కూడా విధించబడిన వ్యక్తిపైనే ఉంది, అతడే చెల్లిస్తున్నాడు, అది ప్రత్యక్ష పన్ను. పరోక్ష పన్ను అంటే అంతిమ భారము వేరే వ్యక్తి, అంటే ఉత్పత్తిదారుని పైన ట్యాక్స్ వేసినప్పుడు, పన్ను విధించినప్పుడు ఆ ఉత్పత్తి భారాన్ని అతడు ఎవరికి ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ చేస్తాడు అంటే వినియోగదారునికి. అది అంతిమ భారము వినియోగదారుని పైన పడుతుంది. అయితే ఈ విధంగా మనము చూసినప్పుడు ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నులు, పరోక్ష పన్నుల్లో చూసినప్పుడు మనము ఆదాయ పన్ను, వడ్డీ పై పన్ను, తర్వాత మూలధనముపై పన్ను, సంపద పన్ను, కార్పొరేషన్ పన్ను, ఈ విధంగా ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నుల క్రింద వస్తే, పరోక్ష పన్నుల్లో మనం చూసినప్పుడు వినియోగ వ్యయము పైన వేసే పన్ను పరోక్ష పన్ను క్రింద వస్తుంది. కస్టమ్స్ డ్యూటీస్, ఎక్సైజ్ డ్యూటీస్, తర్వాత అమ్మకపు పన్ను, సర్వీస్ ట్యాక్స్, సేవా పన్ను, ఇవన్నీ కూడా ఇండైరెక్ట్ ట్యాక్సెస్ యొక్క ఉదాహరణలు లేదా పరోక్ష పన్నుల యొక్క ఉదాహరణ అని మనం చెప్పవచ్చు. అయితే ఈ రెండింటి మధ్య ఆ భేదం ఏమిటి అని మనం మాట్లాడినప్పుడు చూసినప్పుడు, సో వెన్ we discuss about we explain about the comparison of direct and indirect taxes. The comparison actually based upon two things. So on the basis of allocation of resources, direct and indirect taxes are compared on the basis of two. One is allocation of resources, second one is administration of taxes, and the third is effects on redistribution of income. So here the direct tax, what is direct tax and what is indirect tax. So it is based, the comparison based upon three things. One is allocation of resources, administration of taxes, and effects on redistribution of income. ఇది ప్రత్యక్ష పన్ను, పరోక్ష పన్ను అనేది తేడా ఈ 3 ముఖ్యమైన అంశాలపైన ఆధారపడుతుంది. ఆధారాలు. ఈ వ్యత్యాసానికి ముఖ్యమైన ఆధారాలు ఏమిటి అంటే, ఒకటి వనరుల యొక్క కేటాయింపు ఆధారముగా ప్రత్యక్ష పన్ను, పరోక్ష పన్ను. రెండవది అడ్మినిస్ట్రేషన్ ఆఫ్ ట్యాక్సెస్, పన్నుల యొక్క నిర్వహణ, ప్రత్యక్ష పన్ను, పరోక్ష పన్ను. మూడవది ఎఫెక్ట్స్ ఆన్ రీడిస్ట్రిబ్యూషన్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్కమ్, ఆదాయం యొక్క పునః పంపిణీ యొక్క ప్రభావాల పైన ఇది ప్రత్యక్ష పన్ను, పరోక్ష పన్ను అనేది మనకు తెలుస్తుంది. అయితే ఈ విధంగా మనము ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నులు, పరోక్ష పన్నులు చూసినప్పుడు, ప్రత్యక్ష పన్నుల గురించి మాట్లాడినప్పుడు, డైరెక్ట్ ట్యాక్స్ ఈజ్ లెవీడ్ ఆన్ ద టోటల్ ఇన్కమ్ ఆఫ్ ద ట్యాక్స్ పేయర్స్. Therefore, taxpayers with higher income pay more tax, while taxpayers earning less pay lower or no taxes. This makes direct taxation equal and just for the majority of the Indian population. And next, indirect taxes. Now, all these taxes are paid as one tax called the GST. Actually, here one word is missing, GST. The important word is missing. Now, all these taxes are paid as one tax called GST. However, there are some indirect taxes which have not been brought under the radar of GST: customs duty, security transaction tax, building and welfare cess, and electricity duty levied by local authorities and state governments are some of them. Okay. So, before the GST, we have to know about what is value added taxes, what is VAT, the importance of VAT. So, VAT was adopted through historical evaluation by France in 1954 to replace turnover taxes. Since 1967, other countries of the European Economic Community, that is EEC, also initiated opting for VAT, value added tax. It is in use in some underdeveloped countries as well. In India, it was introduced on the recommendation of Jha Committee 1978. 1978లో భారతదేశము ఝా కమిటీ సూచనల మేరకు దీనిని అమలుపరచడం ప్రారంభించింది. కానీ వ్యాట్ అనేది ఫ్రాన్స్లో 1954లో మొత్తం లావాదేవీల పైన, అంటే ఒక ఉత్పత్తి యూనిట్ యొక్క మొత్తం లావాదేవీల పైన వేసే పన్ను 1954లో ఫ్రాన్స్లో ఇది ప్రకటించబడింది, అమలుపరచబడింది. కానీ ఇతర యూరోపియన్ దేశాలు 1967 నుంచి ఈ పన్ను విధించడం ప్రారంభించాయి. సో before explaining the types of VAT, first of all we have to know about the meaning of VAT. Value added tax is levied on the sellers of goods and services based on value added by them. According to L.K. Jha Committee, VAT in its comprehensive form is a tax on all goods and services. It is a special characteristic being that it falls on the value added at each stage, from the stage of production to retail stages. The basic difference between the VAT and a sales tax is that the tax liability under VAT is split up into stages. Theoretically, the tax liability in the case of VAT and in the case of sales tax at the retail level should turn out to be the same. This is because the total retail price is nothing but the value added to the raw material. So, different stages of production and trade. So, the value added tax is a tax which is split up into stages. Forms of VAT. These are two important varieties of VAT, that is the consumption variety and the income variety. The consumption variety, the difference between these two varieties emerges from the treatment of capital depreciation. If a firm is allowed to deduct the entire credit when the capital equipment is purchased, the system is termed as consumption VAT. If the firm is allowed to deduct the credit as the equipment depreciates over time, the system is termed as income VAT. So, Carl S. Schwab distinguishes between four possible varieties of VAT. So, an economist, Carl S. Schwab categorized as four possible varieties of VAT. First one is production VAT. In this variety of VAT, to arrive at the value added by the firm, the value of the inputs purchased by it from the other firms is not deducted in full, only the value of non-capital purchases is deducted. So, no depreciation is allowed, no wear and tear expenditure is allowed on the purchases of capital goods even in subsequent years. For the economy as a whole, the value added becomes equal to the gross national product. The tax base for any firm will be just sales minus material. So, this is the first type. The second variety, consumption VAT. So, in this variety, the production unit is allowed to deduct from gross value added not only the non-capital inputs but also the capital equipment so purchased. So, therefore, aggregate base incomes, that is investment, is the consumption in the economy. All the European countries which have adopted VAT have chosen the consumption variety, and in the third variety, wage type VAT. Under this system, the firm is able to deduct the net earnings from its capital in order to arrive at the tax base. Since earnings from capital amount to profit plus interest, so therefore the balance left to the taxed is equivalent to wages. Therefore, this variety of VAT is called wage type. And the fourth one is income type VAT, value added tax. Under this variety, the firm is allowed to deduct the full value of its non-capital purchases from other firms and depreciation on the capital purchases from other firms. This gives proper net value added. For the economy as a whole, the aggregate tax base would be the net national product. In other words, the tax base is sales proceeds minus materials used minus depreciation. The income variety is the most complicated of all varieties. So, some merits of value added tax. It is simple, it is easier to assess tax liability of a firm by using the credit method. there is also a greater scope for cross-checking of returns submitted by firms. Neutral in resource allocation. So, a general VAT is supposed to be neutral to the resource allocation, forms of production and business organization. VAT is also neutral between factor costs because it taxes all value added, and minimum scope for tax evasion. VAT minimize scope for tax evasion because the tax is divided into parts, and therefore the increase to a VAT tax by any one firm is reduced, and it is the interest of a firm to account for the taxes paid for by earlier firms through which the inputs have come. Next, the merit is conducive to efficiency. It is a claim that VAT is conducive to efficiency since a firm is not exempted from its tax liability. Even if it runs into a loss, it pay a less tax on not on its profit but on the value produced. It therefore tries to improve the performance and reduces the cost of production. So it means it has the economy advantage. Some demerits of value added tax are complicated system. VAT system is complicated one. In theory, it is a single uniform rate tax without any exemption, but in practice, it has got to be multi-rate system with exemption to certain industries. It is necessary that the country adopting it should also be sufficiently advanced in its financial and economic structure, and the firm should be in the habit of keeping proper accounts. And the next disadvantage or demerit is less revenue to the state. So unless the rate of tax VAT are extraordinarily high, the state would end up with a smaller tax revenue as against the collection from sales tax. And maintaining costly accounts. VAT forces traders to maintain elaborate and costly accounts. This becomes uneconomical, especially for the smaller firms. And next one is modified value added tax, mode VAT. It is called mode VAT. So in India, the Indian government introduced a modified system of value added tax or mode VAT with effect from March 1st, 1986. So this mode VAT is different from the VAT system as it takes into account the duty paid on inputs while calculating the taxes to be paid by the producers. Mode VAT system permits the manufacturers to obtain complete reimbursement of excise duty which is already paid on the component and raw material used in the manufactures of final product. So it is the modified. The mode VAT system was introduced in the Union budget of 1985-96 to 96, 85-86. Initially, it was introduced for a select number of commodities subject to central excise duty. It has now expanded to cover almost all items. After some times, it expanded to all items. So next is a central value added tax. Central value added tax, CENVAT. The excise duty rate structure was nationalized in the 1999-2000 budget by introducing three ad valorem tax rates of basic excise duty, namely 9%, 16%, and 24%. An important step in the direction of reforms of excise taxation was taken in 2001 and 2001-2002 budgets with the introduction of a single rate central value added tax (CENVAT) by replacing the three ad valorem rates with a single rate of 16%. So here are some theories of taxation are there. One is the physiocratic theory. This is the earlier theory regarding taxation, and this is based on the view that land is capable of producing a net surplus. Physiocrats maintained that agriculture alone could yield a net return and could be added to wealth of the country, and hence recommended that revenue of the state should be derived from single direct tax levied upon land. Okay, the second one is financial theory. Financial theory of taxation aims at obtaining maximum amount of revenue rather than on proper distribution of burden of taxation. The greatest danger in following this theory is that the burden of taxation may fall mainly on weak and voiceless people rather than on rich and vocal. It means this financial theory of taxation leads to the concentration of economic power. And horizontal and vertical equity theory. Equity involves two aspects: the treatment of people in like and unlike circumstances. The like circumstances implies that those who are equally well off should pay equal amount as taxes. It is called horizontal equity. The unlike circumstances implies that people in dissimilar circumstances should be subjected to dissimilar treatment. That is, the person who are better off should be pay more as taxes than other. This is called vertical equity. And the fourth theory is cost of service theory. This theory stresses the semi-commercial relationship between the state and citizens to a greater extent. The implication is that the citizens are not entitled to any benefits from the state, and if they do receive any, they must pay the cost thereof. Thus, according to this theory, the basis of taxation should be the cost incurred by government on different services for the benefit of the individual taxpayers. The next important theory is the benefit received theory. According to this theory, the state provides various goods and services to the members of the society, and they contribute to the cost of this supplies in proportion to the benefits received. So, the relationship between the taxpayer and the state is in quid pro quo terms. It is no exchange relationship. It is an exchange relationship. So, the next one is Lindahl's solution. The most formal and rigorous formulation of the benefits received approach was provided within a framework of voluntary exchange theory of public finance by Eric Lindahl. Lindahl took the case of two individuals by assuming that they constitute the society and then tries to work out the optimum level of a state activity and the corresponding equilibrium division of the tax burden between the two individuals. So next theory is ability to pay theory of taxation. According to this theory, each person should contribute to the state in proportion to his ability to pay. The basic tenet of the ability to pay doctrine is that the burden of taxation should be shared among the members of society so as to satisfy the principle of justice and equity. So therefore, two approaches for measuring ability to pay: subjective approach and objective approach. And that one is objective approach of ability. In the objective approach the faculty theory has been evolved to measure ability to pay, and the second one is subjective approach of ability to pay. The subjective approach is based on the psychological or mental reaction of the taxpayers. This approach proceeds on the assumption that a taxpayer undergoes a hardship or suffers a sacrifice by paying the tax. It is also assumed that a taxpayer's sacrifice depends upon his own tax liability and is not affected by tax liability of others. In the subjective approach, we estimate the burden felt by the taxpayer or the sacrifice undergone by him. Each taxpayer should make equal sacrifice if tax burden is to be evenly distributed. Equity approach will dictate that each taxpayer should be made to undergo same amount of sacrifice irrespective of his income. So these are the value added taxes. When we study and discuss about the taxes, about the taxes, direct tax and indirect tax, we have to know about some concepts regarding this taxes, direct and indirect. One important is taxable capacity, సామర్థ్యము, పన్ను సామర్థ్యం, పన్ను చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యము. So taxable capacity refers to the maximum capacity that a country can contribute by a way of taxation, both in ordinary and extraordinary circumstances. The concept of taxable capacity is an expression of the common belief that there is always be an upper limit to the level of taxation, though there has never been an agreement as to this limit. The term taxable capacity refers to the sacrifice the community is able to sustain. సామర్థ్యం ఎంత ఉంది అంటే పన్ను చెల్లింపు సామర్థ్యాన్ని బట్టి చెల్లించడం అనేది. The term taxable capacity can be stated in two senses. One is absolute taxable capacity and the second one is relative taxable capacity. About absolute taxable capacity, it refers to a single community and implies that the maximum amount that can be collected from the community without causing any unpleasant effect. Okay. A relative taxable capacity, it is related to the two or more communities. It refers to the taxable capacity of one community as compared to that of another. It refers to the proportion in which two or more nations or states in a federation should contribute to the common expenditure through taxation. So the factors determining the taxable capacity. So taxable capacity depends on the following factors. Important. First one is income and wealth distribution. Income and wealth distribution of the community will have an important bearing upon the capacity, since it will affect the marginal utility of income and wealth, and hence the sacrifice which the taxpayer will have to bear. Pattern and rate structure of taxation. The pattern and rate structure of taxation and the mode of tax collection are important variables to influence the taxable capacity. Taxes on earned increments, windfall, and capital gains are not expected to worsen the taxpayer's position. Income stability. The taxable capacity is highly in those countries where income is stable. Income of the people is more stable in industrially developed countries than in agricultural countries. Agriculture is more easily influenced by some exogenous factors such as monsoons, which is in turn affects the income of agriculturists and revenue and the government. So hence the taxable capacity of agriculture based countries is less than the in industrial countries. And the next factor is the nature of public expenditure. If the public authorities are helping the economy through capital accumulation, provision of social overheads, improving the productivity efficiency of labor, encouraging the adoption of better techniques of production, and so on, then taxable capacity will improve. And the next factor is psychology of a taxpayer. People are willing to undergo more sacrifices during war, which they believe to be a just one. Citizens who are more fervent in their religious and social obligations are ready to bear more taxes for financing such activities. And the last one is the last thing is, what is the importance and significance of this concept of taxable capacity? So the concept of taxable capacity enables us to know that how much money can be collected from the people to finance extraordinary expenditure like war. It may prevent a government from imposing unnecessary taxes which may have adverse effects upon production and consumption. The concept may also be useful for the purpose of comparison of burden of taxes as between different states of a federal government. ఇక్కడ పన్ను సామర్థ్యము, పన్ను చెల్లింపు సామర్థ్యాన్ని నిర్ణయించే అంశాలు మనం తీసుకున్నప్పుడు ఆదాయము మరియు సంపద యొక్క పంపిణీ పైన ఆధారపడుతుంది చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యం. ఆదాయము ఎక్కువగా ఉన్నప్పుడు తర్వాత ఉపాంత ప్రయోజనాన్ని కూడా ఇది ప్రభావితం చేస్తుంది. ఆదాయం యొక్క ఉపాంత ప్రయోజనము ని ప్రభావితం చేస్తుంది. అంటే పన్ను చెల్లింపు సామర్థ్యాన్ని నిర్ణయించే అంశాలలో ఆదాయము మరియు సంపద పంపిణీ ఒకటి. తర్వాత పన్ను యొక్క నిర్మాణము, పన్ను రేటు, పన్ను యొక్క తీరు పైన కూడా పన్ను చెల్లింపు సామర్థ్యం ఆధారపడుతుంది. తర్వాత ఆదాయము స్థిరత్వము, ఆదాయము స్థిరమైన ఆదాయం అభివృద్ధి చెందిన దేశాలలో మరియు చెందుతున్న దేశాలలో వేరు ఉంటుంది, చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యము వేరు ఉంటుంది. తర్వాత ప్రభుత్వ వ్యయం యొక్క స్వభావముపై కూడా ఆధారపడుతుంది. పన్ను చెల్లించే వాళ్ళ యొక్క మానసిక స్థితి, సైకాలజీ పైన కూడా ఆధారపడుతుంది పన్ను చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యము. నెక్స్ట్ పన్ను చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యం యొక్క ప్రాముఖ్యత ఏమిటి అంటే మనకు ప్రజల నుంచి ఎంత పన్ను అంటే వస్తుంది, పన్ను ద్వారా రాబడి ఎంత వస్తుంది అనేది మనకు తెలుస్తుంది. తర్వాత ప్రభుత్వము ఎక్కువ పన్నులు విధించకుండా కూడా ఇది అంటే అరికట్టడానికి సహాయపడుతుంది. అవసరం లేని పన్నులు చెల్లించకుండా, తర్వాత ఉత్పత్తి మరియు వినియోగము పైన కూడా దాని యొక్క ప్రభావం ఉంటుంది. కాబట్టి ఇది ముఖ్యమైన అంశము, ముఖ్యమైన భావన అని మనము చెప్పవచ్చు. దీనితో నేను ఈ పన్ను యొక్క రకాలు, ముఖ్యంగా ఇప్పుడు ఈ లెసన్లో పరోక్ష పన్నుల గురించి ఎక్కువగా చెప్పాను. అంటే వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ ట్యాక్స్ ఎన్ని రకాలు, వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ ట్యాక్స్లో ఎన్ని రకాలు ఉంటాయి, తర్వాత పన్ను సామర్థ్యాన్ని చెల్లించే సామర్థ్యాన్ని నిర్ణయించే కారకాల గురించి చెప్పాను. ఇంతటితో నేను ఈ డిస్కషన్ని, ఈ టాపిక్ని ఆపివేస్తున్నాను. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.